And here's the funny thing. Everyone's like, oh, what's Donald Trump going to say? Donald Trump needs to lead. Why is Elon Musk leading? I got a question for you. Who the hell is president right now? This is not Donald Trump's budget. This is not Donald Trump's continuing resolution. If the government shuts down, it's not Trump's fault. He literally has no political power in any way whatsoever vested in a government position. He's a private citizen still. Joe Biden is president. I hate to break it to you. And you never heard Biden's name once in that news report or any of the news reports that come out of this. So that brings us to yesterday morning when, thanks to the leadership and direction of, yes, Trump and Elon Musk, even though they don't have any political position right now or authority, Republicans went back to the drawing board. And they went from a 1,500-page bill to a bill that is a little over 100 pages. And it did four things. It extended the funding of the government through March. It provided the hurricane relief. It provided the relief for farmers, and it eliminated the debt ceiling for 2 years. Trump asked for that because Trump wanted the debt ceiling to not be an issue so that he can have some freedom to get stuff done in his first 100 days. And everybody went nuts, mostly Democrats, but a handful of Republicans, and we'll get to them in a minute. But here's the Democrats. First, this is, of course, Representative Rosa DeLauro, which I believe her district in New York includes Sesame Street. She represents all the Muppets because she himself, it's identity politics. She's a Muppet herself. And she got the talking points that had been issued for Democrats and the media about this thing. And it was blame Musk, blame Musk, blame Musk.
They write the bill. They post the bill. They agreed on a bill.
They signed it.
And you know what? They got scared because President Musk told them, President Musk said, don't do it. Don't do it. Shut the government down. Imagine. What does he know about what people go through is when the government shuts down? Are his employees furloughed? Hell no. Is he furloughed? No. And when you shut the government down, people don't get paid. And maybe if none of us got paid if the government shut down, some people on the other side of the aisle would feel differently about where we're going in this effort.
All right. So, first of all, let's just be clear here. What a moron. I do love who represents Democrats in this country. I hope they're proud. I hope they're proud of their Muppet there. Couple things here. You notice this term furloughed. Elon Musk's employees don't get furloughed. Elon Musk furloughed. What does that even mean? Do you use the term furloughed in your business if you have to go without pay? You don't, do you? No. You call it being laid off or fired, right? Or because no one really works without pay, right? So what's a furlough? Here's what a furloughed federal employee is. That means that you will get paid. You just won't get paid right now. You'll guarantee that you'll get paid a month from now, even if you didn't have to come into work. That's what furloughed is. I do talk radio here in Washington, D.C. I think you know the morning show on my radio station here in Washington. And I've been through a couple of these government shutdowns over the 13 years that I've been here. And a lot of my listeners are federal employees. They don't mind the government shutdown. You know what happens with them? First of all, non-essential workers are the ones who are furloughed. I remember in the last government shutdown, somebody highlighted the fact that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, I believe it was 97% of their employees were furloughed because they're non-essential. Now, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think if you work for the government and your job is non-essential, maybe we should just eliminate that job. If it's been, because again, old-fashioned thought here, but I think that we, the people, through our federal government, should only be employing people who are essential. And if they're not essential, let's let the private sector do that job. Okay? I know it's an old-fashioned notion, but maybe it's one whose time has come. But if you are a non-essential employee, you are sent home. You do not report to work. And when the government turns back on again and is funded again, which it will be, and you come back to work, you get all your back pay, even if you didn't work. That's what furloughed means. So she's absolutely right. Elon Musk's employees do not get furloughed. In fact, nobody in the private sector, in the real world, outside of the federal government, is furloughed. We get fired. We get laid off. We have to go on unemployment or dip into our savings. And we certainly don't get our back pay when the company's back up and running again. I hate to break it to Congresswoman DeLauro, but we've all been through this very recently. We all wanted to work. We were able to work, but our companies were forced to shut down by people like her in the government. It was called the pandemic. It was called the lockdown. She was in full support of it. So please don't come screaming at us and telling us about the plight of these poor people who are suffering because of their furlough. All right? Because we had much worse than that during the pandemic. This kind of thing doesn't work anymore when we have a government shutdown. But you saw the other tactic there. President Musk's in charge. They think that they're in some way tweaking Donald Trump, that they're like triggering him because they think that Trump is a big narcissist and he doesn't like the idea that Musk is in charge. So they all did it. They're so blatant, they're so obvious, they're so transparent, but it doesn't work anymore.
And a tweet changed all of it? Can you imagine what the next 2 years are going to be like if every time the Congress works its will and then there's a tweet or from an individual who has no official portfolio, who threatens members on the Republican side with a primary, and they succumb? This institution has a separate responsibility based upon the separation of powers. Members of Congress don't serve under presidents of the United States.
Yeah. Do you notice what he just said there? Can you imagine what life is going to be like in the next 2 years if every time members of this body, the House of Representatives, do things that the people are angry about, and then they're under threat that they're going to lose re-election? I mean, we can't operate that way. We can't operate knowing that when we go back home, we're going to lose re-election if we do something that our voters don't like. Think about what he's saying, which, by the way, is exactly how our founders envisioned the House of Representatives to function. That's why they only have 2 terms. They want them to be directly accountable to the people in the most immediate way possible. And what he's voicing out, what he's saying out loud here, which has always been the quiet part, is, nah, God, this is awful. The people are actually seeing what we're up to. They're actually being informed through this X platform about all the bullshit we're engaged in. We keep this up, none of us are going to be reelected. Good. That's the whole point. That's what he's concerned about. I love it when they say it out loud. Over on MSNBC, they are torn. They're schizophrenic. In fact, they don't know what to think because up until this point, they were saying that after Elon Musk bought Twitter, he rendered X completely ineffective and meaningless and without any kind of influence. And they were also mocking Elon Musk for this Doge thing because it had no real political power. It was just an advisory committee. So it didn't have any teeth. It didn't have any staff. It wasn't going to be able to do anything. That was yesterday's news. Now they're terrified that X has too much influence and too much power, and that Elon Musk is actually, in fact, more powerful than the president of the United States. I wish they'd get their lies straight, but here they are.
I've never been here before. And Jim Vandehei, you've got new reporting out this morning for Axios about the government funding fight and how it captures the power and flaws of what you call the new information ecosystem, which is in many ways Elon Musk and X.
I mean, this is your future foretold. You might like it, you might hate it, but it is. Like, you now have Musk controlling the dominant organ of the Republican media industrial complex. There's nothing close.
You remember this guy? I just want to remind you who this guy is. We highlighted a speech that he gave about 3 weeks ago, I think. It was at something at the National Press Club. Jim Vandehei. He used to work at the Washington Post. Then he started Politico, and now he's in charge of Axios. And he was really indignant that Elon Musk takes to his X platform and reminds all of us that we are now the media, right? And remember him? He's like, "You are not the media. That's bullshit," he said. "No, reporters are vital. Reporters are important. Reporters have," and now here he is saying, "This is insane. X is now controlling the media." It's like, dude, you just said that we aren't the media. And now he's terrified that we are the media, which is, by the way, exactly what I told you was between the lines of this speech a couple of weeks ago. It's glorious to watch. They don't know what to do.
He single-handedly, with his tweets and his followers, killed that bill. There's no doubt about that. I think the aspirational part of what he's saying probably is a good thing, right? Like, we do spend way too much money as a country, and the process by which we do it is often asinine. And I think that was like the fundamental thing that started this. But now you do have somebody who, at least in this interim period, is arguably the most powerful person in politics and is totally unelected. So now Republicans are seeing they got the benefit of Musk in winning the election. Now they're going to have to deal with the consequences of having a media infrastructure that can put pressure on them to force members to instantaneously change their votes. And make no mistake, that's what happened. Go back and look at X, at the number of members of Congress who went on and genuflected before Musk to say, "I changed my votes because of what you said."
All right. Now, we have a couple of things here that need to be pointed out about Mr. Vandehei. A couple of things that are actually quite impressive that he just revealed without actually revealing it. My favorite part of that little monologue of his was when he said, "Listen, Musk has a point. I mean, the way we go about funding the government and the way these votes come down and the omnibus and all the stuff that I laid out for you, it's terrible. It's broken. It needs to be fixed. And we've got real problems with deficit spending, and it's never going to get fixed unless they change their ways." So he has a point there. We've been talking about it for years. Okay. Think about it for a minute. They've been talking about it for years. They've been waxing poetic. They've been writing their articles. They've been doing their cable news hits. They've been complaining about it for years, and yet nothing changes. They've had no influence. They've had no impact. Musk takes the exact same messages, and he utilizes his voice and his influence, his impact, and it worked. It actually changed the course of this legislation. Something Vandehei and Axios and Politico and the Washington Post and MSNBC have not been able to do for decades, of saying the exact same thing, which is what Vandehei just admitted to. So his real complaint about Musk is not that he's wrong on the issue, but he actually has impact and influence. In other words, hey, leave this to the professionals, okay, Elon? Because we complain about this all the time, and we're not able to get anything done. We have no impact and no influence, and that's the way things ought to be, is what Jim Vandehei just admitted to, and it's glorious. His other complaint is that Elon Musk now has all this influence, all this impact, all this power. He's so rich, and yet he doesn't actually hold an official elected office. Jim, you might want to look into a guy named Soros. And I'm not saying that Elon Musk is our Soros, because I don't want to have a Soros. But it's pretty remarkable now to see these guys all find religion and suddenly be really concerned about a really rich guy who can secretly, quietly, behind closed doors, influence America's lawmakers at the highest levels, which is exactly what Soros has been doing for years, and now his son does. Frankly, though, Musk is not doing that, because there's nothing quiet and there's nothing secret and there's nothing behind closed doors. He's actually being quite transparent and open, out in the open about it. And guess what? If you don't like it, you can say something about it. But if you say something about George Soros, oh, you're an anti-Semite. You're a Nazi. If you complain about George Soros, you're a conspiracy theorist. If you say something about George Soros, you're actually removed from polite society. But you can complain about Elon Musk. It's amazing. It's almost like they have a double standard. So let's bring it forward to late last night. Republicans bring that bill to the floor. It gets no support from Democrats, except for like 3, I think. Republicans also had problems with it, at least 35 of them. We'll get to them in a minute. But ultimately, we're now supposedly on a brink of a government shutdown thanks to the Democrats. And make no mistake, it is thanks to the Democrats. Chuck Schumer did nothing. Senate Democrats did nothing. Joe Biden did nothing. They've all been MIA. And House Democrats did nothing. All you could see there from the complaints you saw from the 2 we featured, their only messaging in this whole thing was, hey, we had a deal. Well, that deal is gone now. Okay. So now what's your objection to this new bill that continues funding the government, gives hurricane relief, gives farm relief, and pushes back the debt ceiling debate for 2 years? What's your argument about it? The only argument they have is, we had a deal. That's not an argument. And so J.D. Vance was asked in the corridors of the House as he was heading to Speaker Johnson's office exactly what went on. And, well, Vance was not mincing any words.
Mr. Vance, will you accept any deal that does not include a debt limit increase?
Look, I'll say one thing.
By the way, what's this Mr. Vance thing? I'm sorry, I'll let you hear it in a moment. Mr. Vance, he's either Senator Vance or he's Vice President-elect Vance. Mr. Vance? Did they address Kamala Harris as Ms. Harris? Or was she always Vice President or Senator or Your Royal Highness? So right there, that's a tell from the reporter about the lack of respect for J.D. Vance. But that's fine. That's fine. We'll let it go.
Mr. Vance, will you accept any deal that does not include a debt limit increase?
Look, I'll say one thing. The Democrats just voted to shut down the government, even though we had a clean CR, because they didn't want to give the president negotiating leverage during his first term, or during the first year of his new term. And number 2, because they would rather shut down the government and fight for global censorship bullshit. They've asked for a shutdown, and I think that's exactly what they're going to get.
38 Republicans vote against it as well. What's the path forward, Mr. Vance?
Come on, guys.
Are you?
People were concerned that he said global censorship bull in front of his children, but they're his kids. He's allowed to talk in front of them however he'd like. The global censorship, aforementioned bullshit, is a State Department program set up through the Biden administration and through Antony Blinken that actually funneled American tax dollars to foreign entities to silence conservative voices, not just overseas, but here in America as well. Gabe Kaminsky at Washington Examiner has done some great reporting on it. And I think we covered it when he first broke the story with an interview with Gabe. If you look in the archives of whatever platform you're watching us on right now, you'll see it. But yeah, that was continued in this 1,500-page turd sandwich that they tried to put through. And that's what they're upset about, the Democrats are. This is the Schumer shutdown, if in fact there is a shutdown. But where are we now? Here's where we are now. As mentioned earlier, the latest is that they are going to have separate standalone votes now, continuing the funding of the government and giving aid for hurricane relief and for farmers. And the debt ceiling thing apparently is just going to be a handshake deal, which Donald Trump should be very wary of because you can't trust these people. What does that mean? Well, let's turn to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was one that voted against the bill yesterday. She said, I'm one of the most conservative members of Congress. Last night, I voted for a bill that ordinarily I would never vote for. However, the man that took a bullet to the face and won the presidential election with 312 electoral college votes and the most votes of any Republican presidential candidate in history asked me to vote for it, so I did gladly. After Johnson's completely failed us by not including us in the planning of this year's ends government funding and then dumped the 1,500-page cromnibus on us Tuesday night with little time to read it and got caught in his scheme with Schumer, McConnell, and Hakeem by all the great American people here on X, along with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. It was President Trump's team, our incoming Vice President J.D. Vance, and then President Trump himself that dove in the midnight hour, came up with a CR that solves the debt ceiling problem for President Trump, and even more importantly, helped hurricane victims, farmers, and would keep the government open. They shouldn't have had to do it, but they did. After the CR failed last night, I can assure you nothing good is coming behind it. But what is worse, in my opinion, is that we gave up a critical opportunity to unite and pass our own CR, sending it to the Senate with a powerful message to Schumer and the Dems that come hell or high water, we are going to deliver for President Trump and the people who elected him. And this after this, let it shut down. If I'll only vote to pay our military, border patrol, and key federal law enforcement and the very basics to keep things running until January 20th, House Republicans, we better figure out how to get this done next year, and that will require changes. And she included in that a graphic showing that according to Conservative Review, her Liberty score is 100%. So you can't say she's not a conservative with that point of view. And her position kind of echoed by Chip Roy, congressman from Texas, who voted against last night's bill because he believes that he wants real changes to the way the government is taking on and incurring debt. And his objection was the increase, if not outright elimination, for 2 years of the debt ceiling, something Donald Trump asked for at the last minute.
Got through cancer about 12 years ago. I made my promise to my kids that I would do everything I can to save this country. And what we're doing right now is to continue to double down on the things that are destroying the republic. We are going to increase the debt ceiling, not just $4 trillion, that's false. We have spent $4.7 trillion in additional debt in the last 19 months. We're going to increase the debt by $5 trillion. That's what's going to happen right here by Republicans, increasing the debt $5 trillion. And what are you doing in the same bill? $110 billion unpaid for, because you never have any ounce of self-respect to go out and campaign saying you're going to balance the budget, and then you come in here and pass $110 billion unpaid for. On top of the $200 billion you did for WEP, you guys won't agree with that, but the fact of the matter is $330 billion. Congratulations, you've added to the debt since you were given the majority again on November 5th. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. Yes, I think this bill is better than it was yesterday on certain respects, but to take this bill yesterday and congratulate yourself because it's shorter in pages, but increases the debt by $5 trillion is asinine. And that's precisely what Republicans are doing.
All right. Now, like Chip Roy or not, he does have a point. Now, the question is whether right now is the time to fight this fight because Donald Trump, the de facto leader, well, not just de facto, he is the leader of the Republican Party. And as Marjorie Taylor Greene just laid out, was victorious in November. He wants these provisions in so that he can have room to maneuver and work in his first 100 days of his presidency after Chip Roy led these 38 Republicans to vote against what had been worked out through. And understand something. If Republicans had all voted in unison, the way Nancy Pelosi always seemed to get Democrats to do, then the onus would have been on Chuck Schumer, right? Chuck Schumer would then have to stop this. And it would have been de facto the Schumer shutdown. It still is the Schumer shutdown because he's shown no leadership. And again, understand, Biden's in the White House. Schumer runs the Senate. The House is Republican led, but they can't do it all themselves, right? And the Democrats have done nothing. The only way they'll agree to do anything is if you do the 1,500-page turd sandwich that we've been talking about. So by any objective observation, if we have a government shutdown, it's the Democrats' fault. And had Republicans all voted for this last night, then it would have been obvious because Chuck Schumer would have said no, or his hand would have been forced, and then this entire thing would have been a victory for Republicans. Donald Trump did not like what Chip Roy had to say, did not like him getting in the way of the strategy that he's employed, and he made it clear with this post on Truth Social. Chip Roy is just another ambitious guy with no talent. By the way, how's Bob Good doing? Bob Good is a former Republican congressman from Virginia who got primaried just this last year and lost. And he got primaried for very similar reasons that Chip Roy is now on the wrong side of Donald Trump. I hope some talented challengers are getting ready in the great state of Texas to go after Chip in the primary. We won't have a chance. He won't have a chance, excuse me, It should also be noted that Chip Roy did endorse Ron DeSantis in the primary. So there's a lot involved here with the operators at play. But let's be clear. We'll bring it back to the latest news, and we'll wrap things up with this. I think sanity, I was fine with yesterday's bill. It wasn't great, but I understood why we got there. It didn't pass. Like it or not, that is now in the past, and Republicans have to move forward. It seems to me that instead of cramming everything together, it makes sense to have everything be a separate bill. That's what they're getting. The disaster relief might not go through. The CR might not go through. The farm aid might not go through. But here's the bottom line. If those individual elements get voted down by your representative, you'll know exactly what they did and why they did it. All right. And they can't pass the blame. They can't pass the buck, and they can't hide. That's the best thing about having these individual standalone bills. And it's why the House of Representatives hates doing it, because they can't hide. They can't lie to you anymore. And, well, that's exactly what we're going to get a little later today with these bills. And that, I think, is a good thing. It actually advances us even further, that there's no hiding. There's nothing but transparency. If they vote against disaster relief, they can't say they voted against it because it raised the debt ceiling. If they vote against the continuing resolution, they can't say they voted against it because they didn't agree with the farm aid bill. No, you're exposed now. Vote. That's your job, literally. And whatever you do, don't blame Elon Musk. Elon Musk is only guilty of one thing: shining the light on what you're doing. And that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Increased tariffs on our trade partners, tax cuts, regulation changes. I want you to learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever. And Birch Gold, the only gold company I'll endorse, is releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era, with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. So that tells you something. Get your free copy along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold. Just text my name, Larry, to 989898. The facts are this: the national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt continue to increase. I mean, this is ripped right from today's headlines, literally. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar, and Birch Gold still the company I recommend to help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. So text my name, Larry, to 989898. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. That's written by with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, only information. Text Larry. The number is 989898. Do that today.